you all, and thank you for coming to take a look at Liquified. I'm going to talk about two things. One, I'm going to talk about inspiration, and the other about technique. So where does inspiration come from? For an artist, I think it comes from looking at other artists, from media, from the world at large, from just being open and aware of many different things. When I think about the artists that have inspired me, I think back to Japanese printmakers, Hokusai, Hiroshige, who looked at water as a form of pattern, flattened, very, very crisp. I think about Winslow Homer, who made passionate marks with turbulent water. I think about Monet. Some of you may have seen the fabulous Monet in the Seine exhibition that's at the Museum of Fine Arts right now, and about the kind of brush marks that he used, pastel kind of palette, not highly saturated at all. I also think about David Hockney and the way he took flattened, highly saturated color to delineate swimming pools. But for me, water has always been part of my life. I think of it as an object used in ritual. We think of water as a way of purifying. You are born in water, in amniotic fluid. You can drown in water, so it has this connection metaphorically to life and to death. But the artists, as I've mentioned, that have influenced me greatly also include Gustav Klimt, because he used a lot of patterning and rounded shapes when he was creating forms. So that inspiration was going on, and in 2004 I was teaching at St. Agnes Academy. It's a Catholic girls' school, and I was teaching really smart young women. I think there are a couple women from St. Agnes who are here right now. And I was trying to teach them about the body in motion. And when I think about the body in motion, I think often of the famous photographer Edward Muybridge, who captured horses and humans as they were walking, and you began to see what locomotion looked like. And I wanted a way to communicate both motion and foreshortening to students. And so to do that, I decided to use a neighboring school's swimming pool, Straight Jesuit. And we got some of these portable, very inexpensive cameras that you could get at Walgreens for $10, those underwater cameras. And I told the girls to put on things that moved, things that flowed. There was an aesthetic reason to do that, but I actually didn't want anybody to see me look in a bathing suit, right? Like, I'm not getting in a bathing suit and walking in front of those skinny little girls, you know, it's not happening. So we went underwater, we photographed each other, and we began to paint. And the idea was really sparked in 2004 when I was watching the Beijing Olympics. And I was watching the footage, the camera footage of the swimmer Michael Phelps. And part of his body was very clearly defined underneath the water, and the other part disappeared. It literally liquefied. It was fragmented, refracted, changed by the light, and it was so fascinating that I decided that I was going to try to pursue something like that. I'm going to need some help. Joel, will you and Maureen, Robert, can we use that bench just for a minute? I'm going to show you a little bit about what foreshortening looks like and why I was so interested in trying to capture that in some of the images. So will you grab that bench and bring it right about here? There's a painting from the Renaissance called The Dead Christ by Masaccio, in which the feet of the figure of Christ is very close to the picture plane, and the head is very far away. And that's a great definition of foreshortening. If you'll just put the bench right here. And then I need a real Invicta. Kelly, you're in. I need you to lay down on this bench. Your feet here and your head here. And I'm going to ask you all to move around this way and kind of look at, imagine that this is a painting in where you see a body that's dead. Sorry, Kelly, you're just dead. But that you see the feet first. So you got to really move around here. Okay? So what happens is that the feet, because they're closer to the viewer, look larger than the head, but we know that the head is actually physically, if you measured it, larger than the feet, right? That's foreshortening. Thank you, Kelly. The other thing compositionally that I look for is a diagonal line, and I talk about this a lot when I'm teaching, that those things that are straight up and down are things that are alive, trees, humans, buildings. Those things that are laying quietly flat, parallel to the horizon, are things that are at rest. And then if you tried to create a diagonal line with your body, if you stood, say, for example, on one leg, and you leaned over to the right and made all of your weight go over to the right and create this diagonal line, what's going to happen? What am I going to do if I keep leaning? I'm going to what? Oh. Okay, there's a kind of tension there. So in this particular painting right over here, you can see the strong diagonal line that kind of creates a tension, and that's what I'm looking for shortening, diagonal tension, highly saturated color, and the intersection between the figure and abstraction. So those are the things that inspired me. Certainly I've been thinking about autobiographical things. I think all artists do that your life becomes part of what your art is all about. In 2009, my father passed away, and I did another solo show, which was called Submerged, and all of that was actually about letting go of grief, being kind of drowning in sorrow. This particular body of work is not like that at all. It's a little bit more hopeful. It's about becoming, emerging. And I'll talk a little bit about the technique, which actually transformed my models, who were really 11 and 12-year-old friends, gymnasts, and I'll describe that in a little bit. So the process involves starting with photography. I started out with that very inexpensive camera. My sweet husband gave me an upgrade, fiance, upgrade, to a Canon underwater camera, which was really great, and allowed me a little bit more control to be working under the water. And I was working with Bella McNamara-Haba, who is the daughter of my roommate from Venice, my New York University classmate, her mom is right over there, her dad, you can wave, John, her dad right over there. So I first started drawing Bella in Venice when she was 4 years old, and did a drawing of her where she was going, hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil. So she's sort of used to taking directions from me, even at the age of 4. So Bella and her friend, who is also a gymnast, I'm not sure if she's still doing gymnastics, but Katie Vlasic, posed for me. And it was Ken isn't here, but Maureen's friend Ken, and was it John also, who lent their pool? Pardon me? David, sorry, I apologize. Lent their pool. And I tried to disguise the fact that we were using a swimming pool, that the water that we were looking at doesn't necessarily reflect the fact that it's a pool, but it could have been a body of water. So started with photographs and created a grid. And if you look at this painting over here, which is called Rising to the Surface, there is a portion of the grid that remains so that you can see the technique that I was using to enlarge the image from a photograph, which was 8 by 10, to a much larger image. I work in a number of different media. It's not easy for me to just do one thing. Part of being an artist is having that sense of curiosity that you can't really satisfy, that you continue striving, well, what if I try this, or what if I try that? So some of the works are oil, rising to the surface, making a splash, and some of the others down this particular wall are oil, and some of them are acrylic. On the precipice, this larger piece with Bella facing upward, it's acrylic on Yupo, and for those of you that are artists, you'll know that Yupo is a plastic paper. For those of you who have never seen or worked with that, it's a very interesting surface in that the paint does not absorb into the surface but remains on the top. So you can get these sort of slippery kind of motions which replicate water, so that's really kind of fun. And then some of the images are watercolor. For sure. Nightcrawler, which is right behind Maureen, has some additive material. There's salt in there, which of course creates texture, and alcohol that's been dropped in to the surface, which kind of opens up the picture plane. So there are lots of changes, of course, that are made in the process of painting these images, I don't like stick directly to the photograph. I do make changes, some of them editorial changes, aesthetic changes. For example, in the two girls, the painting of the two girls is called Facing the Future. You'll notice that the hands kind of disappear. Well, I tried painting that hand or two, maybe 3 or 4 times, and for those of you that are artists, they know how hard it is to paint hands and fingers and so forth. I just gave up and just put hair over top of them. That worked out pretty well. So I talked a little bit about the technique, the process of painting. What I didn't talk about was the fact that there were not only human models, but there were also dog models. There were 3 dog models. My dog, Rocket, who was a poodle, quite frightened of water. There was Angel, who was a golden. And then there was Maggie, who was a Weimaraner. Maggie has since, I'm sorry to say, passed away. And the image of Maggie was purchased, and so it's no longer here. But the images of the golden are still up here and here. And it took 6 humans to wrangle with the dogs to get them to do what I wanted them to do under the water. The golden went in before I even had the camera ready. I mean, it was like, oh, water, water, water. The others were very frightened. It took a long time. So this process for me has been one of great joy. And as you can see, the images are a little bit more abstract than some of the pieces, if you know my work, than some of the pieces I've done before. But that's, for me, the fascination, when an image becomes liquefied by light, changed by the refraction of water and light. So I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have, any thoughts that you have. If you want to share, that would be great. I'd like to thank Nicole for her great support, and Stephanie for shooting this wonderful film, and my husband Paul for being so supportive, and all of our friends, and Brad for all of the work that he's done to hang the show and so forth. So thank you for your attention, and any questions or thoughts?
I have one.
Okay, great. Go for it.
What's the medium of the dog, which happens to be one of my favorites?
Oh, this one, it's an oil. The dog?
Yes.
That is acrylic on Yupo paper.
Okay,
it's got
yes.
watercolor in there, but some of the more dense, opaque areas are acrylic. And interestingly enough, acrylic, like watercolor, stays on the surface of Yupo, but you can get a flatter area with acrylic than you can with watercolor. Watercolor's tricky.
That's one of my favorites. I really like that one.
Thank you.
And I love that you were able to get the reflection of the water.
Well,
All
thank you.
colors.
Thank you. It's been a lot of
Great.
fun. Thank you. Any other?
And the medium on
The two girls, which is called Facing the Future, that one, that is an oil.
Okay.
Yeah, that's an oil. And there's a lot of linseed oil and turpentine in the oil. Some people have said, you know, you handle oil as if it was watercolor. I guess it's all kind of related to that consistency, you know, that I like it to be loosey-goosey.
I think it's a great name for the show, Liquified, because that is definitely applies to the paint, to the surface, to the...
Absolutely, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm glad that that connects for you.
Yeah.
For sure.
Great show.
Thanks. Any other? No questions? No more questions? Well, thank you. Enjoy, take a look around, and thank you all for coming. Thank you so much.